Please sit. Put your money on the table. Welcome. The cards can illuminate your future. I have a feeling you're in danger.
Actually, I prefer to read your fortune. I see your next client is here to kill you. Oh, how I've missed you, Holmes.
Hello, welcome to What the Flick. Look at our shiny set. Look how we're managing it, maneuvering around it. We're so comfortable here. I'm comfortable. You're enjoying coffee.
I'm drinking coffee because
I'm waiting for the waitress to come by with our cocktails.
Where are our drinks? I ordered shots 10 minutes ago.
So did I.
I am Christy. That is Matt. This is Alonso. That is Ben. We're talking about Sherlock Holmes: A Game of Shadows, because you cannot have a sequel without some totally superfluous subtitle after it.
Yeah,
why is it A Game of Shadows?
Whatever happened to 2?
Or part 2, I would.
Yeah, sure.
The numeral 2.
The return
I would accept
of.
that.
Right.
More Sherlock Holmes.
Or like you were going to say, Sherlock Holmes, deduce.
Anyway, so someone please explain Sherlock Holmes. I have no idea what happened in this movie, so someone has to explain it.
So we see Robert Downey Jr. come back as Sherlock Holmes. Jude Law returns as Watson, his sidekick, I guess, his best friend. Watson has gone off to get married. Sherlock Holmes has a problem with that. He's also in the middle of trying to track down the kingpin of crime in Victorian England, which is Professor James Moriarty. And things happen. It gets very, very complicated. You start to wonder who's playing who.
Take a look. Take a look.
Take a look.
I see your web of conspiracy has expanded.
I'm knee-deep in the single most important case of my career. The clues point in one direction.
Professor James Moriarty.
Are you sure you want to play this game? I'm afraid you'd lose. I agree it's not my best disguise, but I had to make do. Didn't see this in the cards, did you? What are we doing down here? We are waiting. Make it count! I'm on my honeymoon! Get that out of my face.
It's not in your face, it's in my hand.
Get what's in your hand out of my face.
The first Sherlock Holmes, De One, was confusing. Like, I had trouble following it. Like, I mean, which frustrated me because who cares? Like, why should I waste my brain space worrying about why a character's motivation? But I really couldn't follow it, and I heard as you guys were chatting that this one was confusing.
I could follow it, but it's jumbled and crazy. Back me up on this one. If you want to make a Sherlock Holmes movie and you want to completely throw out most everything that we actually know about Sherlock Holmes and turn it into something else, which is what the 007 movies are. You know, the guy on paper and the guy in the movies are two different things. Fine, you know, make him an action adventure, whatever. But these are such bad action adventure movies. Like they're so frenziedly edited, and there's so much like giant vistas of CG that look so super fake, where it's 1890s Paris or whatever. And they're loud, and I find these films really annoying.
Right, well, it's not thrilling the way an action film should be for a couple of reasons. One is, and you can't tell from the trailer actually suggests that there is color in this movie, because most of it is just blanketed in this sort of grimy, dreary, gray sameness.
Right, but that's the way London looked back then.
There was no color in London at all in
No,
1891.
they had that whole smog thing that practically wiped out the city.
Even in fancy gentlemen's clubs where
Yes.
acrobats are entertaining?
Yeah.
It
things were
all
rotten.
looks the same and dreary and bad. There's that, but also even basic things like chases and shootouts, like basic staples of the genre, are edited, as you say, in such a frenzied, just incomprehensible way that they don't draw you in the way they should.
You guys talked about it during the thing, but you haven't mentioned it, like crazy slow motion.
This is like the only trick Guy Ritchie still has left in his bag of tricks. And I'm a fan. I like Snatch. I like Rock and Rolla. I'm a fan of his in general. But he keeps going to that one.
Snatch?
Right. That's going to be used somewhere on YouTube,
Really?
I'm sure. I like Snatch.
Not saying anything.
Let's just move on. There's nowhere to go from here. So I had a thought in my head. Oh yeah. So but the thing with like the super slow-mo, where Robert Downey Jr. will see in his mind what's going to happen with the fist fight or whatever, and he narrates it, and then it plays out in sped up fashion. Or the thing with the one scene in the trees.
Every time a firearm
cool.
is engaged, we see like the bullet go
The
into the
casing
chamber and the
comes
thing
out.
pull back
You
and
guys
the
are all
spark
wrong
and
here.
like it's
Why?
once
It's so
or twice it's
repetitive.
cool.
It's
Then it's
so
like
many
every
times.
time.
Okay,
All right,
this
what
movie's fun.
happens?
I like this movie. First of all, okay, it's basically the same movie as the first one. So if you didn't like the first Guy Ritchie Sherlock Holmes, you're not going to like this one.
I didn't like
That
the
being
first one.
said,
Right, okay.
and one of the things I think it does suffer from is I think one of the strengths the first one kind of had was that the idea of turning Sherlock into an action hero and playing up that aspect of the character, nobody had really done before, and that's in the books.
That was clever.
There's
that was
fisticuffs,
clever.
but there's not the amount of like jujitsu.
Well,
that
not
goes
like
on.
you see in an action movie, but you know, if you read those books, like Watson goes on to talk about how Sherlock Holmes was the strongest guy he'd ever met. I mean, Holmes is a badass the way he's written. So I'll forgive that. I think what this movie makes up for there in the lack of newness is the villain here is much better than Mark Strong's villain. I think that
definitely.
Moriarty is so much a better foil for Holmes. And you know, you talk about the slow-mo thing and the fight thing. You know, yes, we saw that in the first movie. I think that you have to establish that kind of again, that, you know, and really, to me, the fight's really only happens twice. There's one scene early on where he's fighting this Cossack character who's hiding up in the rafters, and you see him go through the mental exercise of how he's going to fight him and what he's going to do.
At the very beginning in the alleyway when he's dressed as the opium.
Yeah, he does that. You see,
happens
okay,
a
so
lot.
you see that a couple
Moriarty at the
times,
end,
but
right.
then when he does it for Moriarty, they do a twist on it. And I don't want to spoil what that
that's-
twist on. And I think
Granted,
that
yeah.
if you're going to do that with the twist with Moriarty, then you have to have established it earlier on in the film.
But okay,
And-
but even barring the whole Holmes plays it out in his mind thing, the slow-mo comes up a lot.
The slow-mo, I will say, look, this movie's not perfect, but it's no Michael Bay movie. Come on.
Well,
I mean, it's
okay,
not
yes.
crap, right? I thought this movie was fun. Yes.
I like
The-
Moriarty a lot. I agree with you. Jared Harris is intense. I frankly could have watched an hour of the two of them playing chess.
Yeah, that
because
was
that's
great.
the best part of the movie for me. Like that's these two actors and these two characters who are really intense. And you know,
And it keeps you
Ritchie
guessing.
felt more comfortable with that and less with all the slow-mo and the exploding trees, I think that would have been a much better
That movie, by the way, the Jared Harris, Robert Downey Jr. chess playing movie, that would suck.
Well,
okay. I got it.
okay, maybe not an hour, but you know what I'm saying. That was
it's
a
short.
moment. That moment felt like a genuine, intense, character-based moment that this movie
Right, and
very
there's some
rarely
nice
ever wants to
subtext
indulge
going
in.
on in there. I thought it
Also,
worked really well.
I do love Stephen Fry as Mycroft Holmes.
That was awesome. I
That
thought
was like a visit
hilarious.
from the book. So it was like, oh, okay, someone
That was
actually
perfect.
has read
Who could you
these,
possibly
you know?
cast better
Oh, yeah,
as
no,
Sherlock
he's-
Holmes'
he
older
was-
Asperger brother,
Yeah.
right? Like, I thought that was great. Yes, I think that the slow-mo does happen a little bit too much, but I didn't have a problem with the colors. It's not like some movies where we've seen recently where everything's either blue or brown, right?
Like
yes.
Sucker Punch.
True.
London is very gray. I get that. I'm willing to forgive that because then when you go to Paris, Paris is bright and sunny and beautiful. And you're thinking, and again, if you know any of your history and you know what was happening with the Industrial Revolution in London at that point, yeah, they didn't get sunshine. It sucked up there.
Speaking of Sucker Punch, this was the first movie since Sucker Punch that I left to go to the concession stand during the movie.
What'd
I
you
don't.
get? Wait,
I
this
don't.
is nowhere
I
near
just
as
wanted to
bad
go
as
on.
Sucker
No,
Punch.
I needed to get away from this movie
Was
for a
there
couple
too much
minutes.
fisticuffs?
No, it was just loud.
No, I
and
just like you're the
clanging
first
and-
guy ever to use the word fisticuffs
Well,
contextually in a
we're-
sentence without kidding.
Well, we're
So
talking about Sherlock
They are
Holmes.
fisticuffs.
You know,
Can we talk really fast about Noomi Rapace? Can we talk about her because she's totally goes to waste here. She was
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
original Girl with the Dragon Tattoo star, and she gets to wear. She's like this gypsy fortune teller.
And she's the queen of the gypsies, right?
I guess.
or
They've kind of
something?
written a female character in so that
Just
there's
to have
some
one.
female.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they get rid of Rachel McAdams early. I'm not going to say how, but she's not part of the entire film. But they.
And good riddance, frankly.
But I
you
mostly
like
like this movie.
I like her in general, but not in the Sherlock Holmes movies.
Anyway, it just feels like a waste of her because she has a great presence to her, as we know.
Yeah, they
and
don't
she doesn't
really
get
know
do
what
a
to
whole
do with
lot.
her.
She runs and looks worried, and that's about it.
All right, numbers.
What did I say? I'm a 3. I'm not a fan, sorry.
I said 2.9
Well, Michael,
because it was fun.
Michael
showed me.
Bayish numbers.
Exactly. You guys are way too low. I give it a 7.
Okay.
Right.
What's it doing tomato-wise?
64 last I checked.
So it's dropping. It was like
it
high 70s.
It has dropped, but the original is in the 60s. So
How are the other ones doing? We didn't mention. How's young adult? doing?
young adult is at 80, and Carnage last I checked I think is around 90.
All right, there you go. Split decision on Sherlock Holmes. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Tie goes to
It's a 4.3 if you're keeping score at home.
4.3
Sorry,
numbers.
I need to steal that from you.
No. Somebody needed to say it.
Yes, 4.3. All right, see you.